Yo, assalamualaikum. How you doing, bro?
I'm real quick. Doing my shit. Hold on, my bad.
You fine, bro. Also, how you doing, bro? Assalamualaikum.
Yo, are you on phone right now?
I'm on phone, bro.
You're on phone. Gang,
Yeah,
your
bro.
like your mic kind of like unhearable, bro. I think you should go on PC to be honest.
Bro, I'll go over my WhatsApp. Give me a second.
All right, give me a sec. Shout out to pray in like a few minutes, bro.
You better, bro. Assalamualaikum, bro.
Walaikum assalam. Yeah, that's better.
You just turn up your volume because I might not be able to hear you much good.
Okay, wait, give me a sec. Hold on.
I don't know how to do that through PC.
Alright.
Here we go. Yes, or atheism can justify the proposition of human rights being morally justifiable.
No. It's a topic of whether atheism can justify human rights and morality, not
It's
being
kind
morally
of,
justifiable, but necessarily being
I
used. Right?
mean, it's kind of the same thing, but just different semantics.
Not really. If you were to say atheism is what you would say morally justified, then I think that's kind of saying
Wait,
that
no, 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 no,
atheism
no,
has
no,
a
no. I
belief
didn't
affects the
say
world.
atheism was morally justified. I said if atheism could morally justify the stance of human rights, being morally justified. If
Oh,
atheism
okay, my bad.
could
I
justify that.
misheard that. Yeah, sorry, debating upon.
Alright, so is like your stance like supposed to be the negation, or are you
Yeah,
like
you're
agnostic?
taking moral constructivism, right?
Uh, I'd
Moral
say I'd
constructivism.
like take more of like a stance that it'd be more like a normative truth kind of. I think it's just a
Yeah,
normative
that's
truth.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
that's moral
that's my
constructivism
stance.
because that's
But
like
moral constructivism is basically the methodology we apply to it, kind of like that. I'm using that methodology, but my stance would be that it's a normative truth. But
my bad, bro. My shit cut
alrighty.
off. Hold on. Give me a sec.
Alright, bro. Also, you said you have to go soon.
No, I might need to go like after we debate and shit because
That's fine, bro.
I have way more important stuff. That's fine.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
bro. Real life's more important, anyways, bro. I care about you more than this stupid debate. Like, so inshallah, you get a good sleep, by the way, too. So,
All right. Yeah. So, my bad. I misheard you because my fucking speakers was being asked, bro. Can you repeat what you said?
uh, yeah, I was saying that give me a second. I haven't been drinking water in a while, so um, I said that I.
Because
What you say?
like what you say, like what do you say here? That's moral constructivism right there.
What I was saying is that I think that my stance would be is that it's a normative truth. What I was saying is that moral constructivism would be the methodology I'm applying to, go ahead and give like some form of secular substantiation for that stance. Like, say for
Oh, okay.
example, I'm like trying to use that for epistemic criteria for that.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
Do you have any argumentation against my model as to why it would not be or why atheism could not justify uh that human rights
All
are
right.
justifiable?
All right. Hello. Give me a sec. Let me analyze your stance.
Alrighty. By the way, how's your Ramadan going, bro?
It's going good, but it's quick. Like I've only fasted for 1 day because sometimes I accidentally break my fast.
Bro, I don't think I'm gonna be able to fast anyways because it's been hard because like I'm kind of like a diabetic. So it's just stuff in my body is. I'm trying to fast though, so I've been like eating less and etc. Just trying to like help, get better at it, like for practice stuff like that. So, but inshallah, I do get, you know, like hopefully that my Ramadan gets better. Did you ping my Yeah, you pinged my message for the model already. Oh shit. Oops. Stuff a lot.
Okay, so basically your stance or thing that you're applying to your stance suggests like the need for an external value to establish a moral framework, like if one does not adhere to religious tenets, right?
Basically what I was saying is that since we also like apply religious things to not it's not universally applied, but it's mostly applied across the globe that religious things determine how laws would work and how we would, work within our moral standards, right? And how it governs that basically. It gives us a framework of how to act, etc. But because atheism is dichotomous to the religious factor and etc., it would basically bring a new framework in instead of a religious factor that sets up a law of human standards we should follow or a code of conduct, basically. But because atheism denies this, it would be able to give us a new thing. Well, it's not necessarily a thing that's identified, but it's something there. And I could say or sit there and say that the atheist could believe that it's simply just human free will instead of, a specific code of conduct because theoretically it could be open to interpretation as to what that atheist considers as to, what is the code of conduct to follow because it's not applying a religious ethic code of conduct. So that's basically the model. And the external thing is
So the
basically
model, so the model you're saying is that, for example, we can take what you would say these moral standards as in like inspiration for human rights being justified through atheism. Is that what I'm like tracking?
um not exactly because I said that there isn't a specific type thing of moral standards that atheism would say, and what you're basically like saying is that there's some,
No, that isn't
uh,
that isn't true though, because if there was a purely secular and atheistic view, all right, that should recognize that moral frameworks does derive, or not necessarily does, but it can derive from collective human agreements. For example, if like collective human agreements, it could be based on like shared values like fairness, equality, justice, those simple concepts that we use in our jurisdiction world. So these values, they wouldn't be predicated on religious belief, but rather on the emotional and social consciousness developed through human interactions.
oh yeah, I agree with the fact, but what I'm like basically saying is basically you're just like kind of affirming what I'm saying here for my model right here, right? Because I'm not saying that it would be predicated from human facts. The atheist would negate the fact that it's predicated upon religious facts. Basically, you just kind of like affirm the model right there, or that specific variable of the model. But what I am saying is that since it's not predicated upon religious things, and it could have considerable values which we use with everyday life, right? So since it could have these specific variables, there could be a totality of specific laws in which we follow, but there's not necessarily a specific one that the atheist could follow. What I'm suggesting is that there's multiple things an atheist could follow because it's not predicated upon the religious things, but rather predicated upon the atheist set of belief, which could be theoretically anything. Like, say, for example, someone goes ahead and believes that, let's just say, Booga, for example, right? I use Booga as like a modal operator for this. Booga
Mm-hmm.
basically agrees with the stance that being a pedo is morally justifiable and should be within the everyday life. So basically, because let's just say that within this specific context that he doesn't believe within a religious thing, right? And let's just say Booga would be a atheist with this belief, right? It would be predicated upon himself, not necessarily a religious set of things. So again, like what you kind of affirmed there is still having just some form of conjunctive state of affairs with my model there. There was like
Oh,
no
okay.
necessarily true thing. So I could go ahead and assert that could be like a kind of like a non sequitur because you said that's not necessarily true, but then you sat there and then asserted like a conclusion which then granted the variable of my model.
Oh, okay. So basically, like, what I wanna go here. So, the original construct you gave, and going from this, necessarily, well, what we go over here is that without religious adherence, moral values would lack legitimacy, right?
Can you say that again? I didn't hear you.
Okay, so without religious adherence, moral values would lack legitimacy, right?
Um, Not necessarily.
Uh, isn't that what you said though?
Um, no, my model describes that since religious things have a putative thing, like how it affirms a consequent, that religious thing wouldn't be applicable to the atheist view, but it doesn't deny that moral things could be you know applicable or it doesn't basically affirm the stance that it doesn't
Okay, no,
have
like,
like
okay, so like
it basically like
when I talk
has
about that, right? When I talk about that, I'm saying like, since within religious views it defines what we know. For example, is for example, moral realism, right? It defines
yeah.
moral objective facts that exist within the world. That's what religion does. But in this case, what you're saying here is that without this set religious inheritance, there wouldn't be moral facts that necessarily, for example, going off of moral realism, right? I mean, moral realism, moral constructivism, in a lot of cases, they kind of match with each other. So I'm just trying to give a clear,
Oh, okay,
what you
okay.
would
I get what you're
say,
saying now.
basis.
I get what you're saying now because within religion, I was just like kind of like trying to get like an epistemological like, framework of what you're saying here. Um, what you're basically saying is because religion views as like a creator creating things, that's basically the general concept of that. It would basically, have this code of conduct which we follow, which would be objective moral facts because it comes from the creator and how it's applicable within the set of conditioned things within the universe. But here's the thing, again, um, necessarily within the model, the atheist doesn't agree with that thing. Basically, it's the specific viewpoint of the atheist to deny that moral realism does exist. So the model itself wouldn't necessarily
No, I'm
disagree
not
with.
saying like the say atheist would reject no, not reject, would necessarily accept moral realism. Just trying to give a more basic clear understanding of moral realism, moral constructivism. So if you were to say that religion follows moral realism, then there will be objective facts that exist outside of the natural world which already displace moral objective things, and basically talks about objective morality within the world, which tells us what is necessarily right or wrong. If we were to
Yeah.
deposit in this said situation that, for example, atheism was true, and they necessarily wouldn't be moral objective facts that exist outside the world, but rather just subjectivity around, it necessarily still would come to a consensus whether if we could deposit these same moral facts within just our consciousness and shared interactions.
Oh, okay. So you're basically just asserting that we can like posit these into like some form of objective like framework of reality through our like experience with others, how we react and gain from our moral intuition, right? That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah, necessarily.
All right, but um, going over the model again, like I'll just go over your analogy real quick and like
Wait, wait,
how
wait, wait, wait. Do you understand like my model of ethical motivism?
uh I'd say kind of, but I'd like
Okay, wait. If you want me to like, if you want to clarify on ethical motivism and why I think necessarily it would go against moral constructivism first before you like give your argument of refutation. Basically, like ethical motivism clearly demonstrates that human rights and moral frameworks need not be contingent upon religious beliefs. Instead, like they can be rooted in shared human experiences and emotional um what's the right word? Resonance, I guess. Yeah, resonance. Yeah, emotional resonance. So that necessarily would provide a robust foundation for morality that necessarily would exist in an independently religious doctrine. So necessarily, it is not, for example, ethical subjectivity, but within ethical motivism, since it's like not contingent upon religious beliefs, that makes our own atheistic views within our shared consciousness and human experiences within reality of ethical motivism being objective in this case. So far from undermining the basis for human rights and moral obligations, ethical motivism basically supports an emotively grounded understanding of my bad for this stutter, ethical behavior and compatible with a necessary commitment to, well, you would say, the right of law, the right of jurisdiction, and the right of justice in this case. So that's basically like just my foundation of it.
oh, okay, okay. Also, I'd like to comment upon that, like, and make some objective thing. I would like to say that personal experience, like, and how we enact the world wouldn't necessarily make these specific moral things of which we learn some form of objective thing. I'd say because we rather enact them through our subjective commands and then enact them within the real world and how a specific person would enact them. It doesn't necessarily go for like objective factor which involves within a framework of reality. It basically just be coming from a subjective viewpoint which is enacted within like an external body of a person. It's basically just people enacting their viewpoints into reality. Same way, like say for an example, Hitler basically. Hitler enacted his racist ideals onto reality, basically made Germany a powerhouse. And since he subjectively had that idea, it didn't necessarily make that the racism part or the ideal was true in any way. He was just enacting a viewpoint, enacting and actualizing how the methodology would be. There's a token distinction between methodology and like some form of objective existence within something. So I can like go ahead. I think that would just be like a non sequitur again from you because I don't think the conclusion itself that it could objectively like exist from our own viewpoints because again how we enact them is just the methodology from which we apply it. That's basically what I think about that real quick. Like I just
Okay,
think that this
so
subjective
yeah,
thing
yeah,
is
yeah,
just
yeah. Yeah, yeah, I get it. So, going by this, yeah, so ethical motivism is an actualist position. So, what you said, I entirely understand it, but going off of the actualist response, is basically just this. So, yeah, I understand from what you said. You know that ethical motivism posits that moral statements express our emotional responses and attitudes rather than, asserting objective truths because necessarily that is what ethical motivism is, and that is exactly what you're deriving off from. But necessarily, ethical motivism can align with elements of things like moral realism, even though, for example, atheists can deny moral realism because you know sometimes, well, it's not always the case, but some people think, or some atheists think, that would be contrary to their beliefs. But in this case, moral realism and elements of emotivism, right, that still posits that while morality, right, is derived from human emotions and expressions and stuff, it can still inform objectivity by recognizing the weight of, mm, what do you would say,
the
different
actions.
expressions, different. Oh yeah, yeah. Necessarily like the weight of actions and basically like collective emotional and ethical agreements. So when we take into empathy, when people engage in empathizing those who are different, including consideration and like marginalized groups, it necessarily often leads to what you would say a more objective comprehension of rights that transcend what you would say your individuality. So necessarily, this empathetic model that I use, which is ethical motivism, basically just understands, evolve, and basically just has the understanding that necessarily gives into the framework that it objectively endorses human rights based on a collective agreement around shared values and emotional experiences. If you want to like
Okay,
for me
okay.
to give a basis on like the actions position, then
But
I
no,
can just give
I
a
kind of
syllogism if
understand
you
what you're
want.
saying. I kind of understand because I'm just gonna like hinge like a inference basically upon what you said about the consensus thing about people agreeing. Like people agreeing, like having this dawsastic thing. Like I'd say like a universal belief. It can be universal belief. I'm not saying it would be within this scenario or actualized to be, but yeah, even from the framework of the model which you like asserted or gave, like about people coming to a
Yeah,
consensus.
my model is necessarily like just going against your model, basically saying that objective moral facts can exist without being contingent upon religious things.
Yeah, 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 I understand that, but the point I was trying to make was that the people still agreeing upon that or actualizing their own viewpoint or rather having some subjective point in which then they can enact that. I believe because the thing I gave earlier, the intrinsic part of my argumentation within the point, I would say basically being that the part analogy about the Hitler I gave, and then it having like some sort of conjunctive state of affairs with the other progressive part of my argumentation, basically it being how that's a methodology versus some form of objective existence. I think we could actualize the methodology and how we would apply it to our everyday lives, but yet again, I don't necessarily like think people coming to a consensus. Let's just say like let's go off what you asserted, right? Um, the people taking like some form of viewpoint, like uh let's just say it's basically like if I'm understanding this correctly, if I am, I'm not saying I am. Basically what I'm saying is that what you asserted is that the model introduces some form of consensus, and because people also have this like I guess you could say it's semantically implied within the model that it's like some form of universal belief people would agree upon because people are enacting it through this way, not necessarily like following like some form of religious ideal, and they have it separate to that, and using the ethical emotivism. Oh my gosh, yo, I cannot speak English today.
Yeah,
Emotivism,
it's fine.
yeah, the ethical shit, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Basically,
ethical
it,
emotivism, ethical emotivism.
yeah, sorry, my bad. I just can't pronounce it. Like I have a hard time pronouncing things. So my bad. I'll just continue then. Let's ignore that part. But because they're expressing their feelings into like reality, is that basically what your argumentation is? Like, since people can come to a consensus about like this one belief and can have like a universal belief upon it through them enacting feelings within the basis of reality. Basically, their moral intuition can become like an objective fact. Is that what you're positing? Like, just for clarification
Yeah,
again,
yeah,
like,
basically. Yeah, basically.
okay, I don't think that negates the fact that it's a methodology being applied. It's not necessarily an objective existence because I'll like give another form of substance we could derive. Like basically our epistemological
Okay, wait,
awareness
wait,
is
wait,
getting
wait,
used.
wait, wait. You said it's not like a methodology being applied, right?
No, I didn't say it's not. I said
Okay.
it like is like I affirm that it is. This is a positive claim. Um, because the model which you gave is basically using the methodology of enacting our subjective viewpoints into reality. That does not necessarily make our moral feelings objective anyway. It's just using a methodology to then express ourselves through an external framework within reality. It's just us expressing ourselves in an actualizing way. It's not making the belief objective in any way, like moral realism
Um,
would, because that's what I'm
um,
trying to say. I
no,
don't
like
think the
for example,
model.
what like when we take into moral realism, ethical motivism, that's an actualist position. So like, if you wanted to give like
Yeah, that
the
is an
objective
actual
structure within
position.
it,
I'm not denying the position. the position. What I'm basically doing
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah. I know
to
you're not denying the position,
predicating
but I'm
upon the
saying I
substance,
will give the
basically.
objective structure within the actualist position. That's why.
Yeah, I understand it's like a objectivist position, basically like realist. I'm just like not necessarily like affirming or referring to the position itself, but more so like the I'd say like the substance used to give it some form of normative truth to it. But um that's about it.
What do
One
you
of
mean
like
by formatic truth? What do you mean by
normative
formatic
truth
truth?
is that basically what that is just hold up. Let me just think again. I forgot it. It's just like a truth value that's just not like determined just by simply its existence, but rather referring to something else that can extend it and give it more substance as to why this let's just say X is given more substance as to why it would be this. Basically, it's just giving more logically following premises within that case. Just it's basically just like substance but extended that which gives it some form of sequitur property. That's what I just mean by normative truth. That's it.
Oh, okay. So, all right. So I'll just give the objective structure that would just refute that setting. Okay. So first off, the objective structure of like what you said. First off, um, I necessarily get that, but that's like I'm also going off of the intrinsic like part of the axis position. But basically, for example, with that, I want to focus on that Hitler analogy you gave. But basically, humans intrinsically they just understand the importance of protecting each other from harm necessarily. So that would also lead to the development of frameworks like, for example, maybe a declaration, or no, not necessarily just a declaration, but a universal declaration of morality and human rights. So these frameworks they still reflect objective societal norms that arise from a shared understanding of human dignity and experience. So even if the expressions of these norms stem from emotional attitudes, right? It would still go over the fact that it will come to a universal consensus that necessarily, you know, an objective structure can exist within this. So, if ethical motivism asserts that moral statements express emotional attitudes rather than just objectivity, so for example, when an individual declares something as morally right or wrong, they are necessarily expressing their feeling about that said action. For example, quote unquote, murder is wrong, expressing disapproval of this said murder. So, that is necessarily what you would say a proposition going by somebody's individuality. So an emotional response to human experiences, for example, suffering and injustice, is like which what you would go off within the Hitler analogy, necessarily are universal and common among all humans, regardless of their, for example, being contingent upon their religious or atheistic
Yeah,
beliefs. So
yeah, yeah,
most
yeah.
people they would necessarily have innate emotional reactions that encompass empathy and compassion and revulsion towards this harm about that. So I want to give a kind of syllogism real quick to support what I said further in case if you can refute that. So
No, 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 no.
necessarily
I think I
what
got it.
you think I
I think
got
I
it?
got it. Yeah, I think I got it.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking upon the analogy you gave, like about the universal doctrine thing, about how people would want to protect each other from harm. What about people who want to harm others, though? All people, like say for
People who
example,
want to arm others, they're just I guess necessarily
and that
against
wouldn't
this said
count as like
universal.
universal adoption then, because when we talk about universally applicable things, like let's just say in the context of that lexicon with the universal doctrine about people wanting to protect themselves, that would be a universal quantifier having some sort of conjunctive relationship with that. But since there also exist people who want to harm them, who want to harm each other as well, or let's just say people who encourage suicide, who want people to harm themselves, there's people who exist like that, which would make which would just negate the idea of it being a universal doctrine that people would want to protect each
Okay,
other
wait,
from
okay, wait.
harm.
I just have like a simple refutation of that. So, I think that's just kind of like the subjectivity of moral thinking. So, if a person believes that, for example, murder is right, they're expressing a particular emotional attitude towards that sad action. Therefore, they're placing value to that sad action. So they are reflecting their subjective perspective. But however, in this case, just because someone has a belief or emotional response does not mean that this belief is morally justified or shared by this society. Because emotivism recognizes the diversity of moral opinions, but does not equate all opinions with moral correction, right? So, for example, if
Well,
we go by
yeah.
this moral consensus within societal norms, societies within the human race, they typically develop moral norms based on, for example, collective emotional responses. For example, within the 19th century, for example, the age of consent, right? We go by saying pedophilia is wrong. You can't, for example, have intercourse with a kid because that's just entirely morally wrong. I mean, going like outside, and if that's not even contention on the religious level, it is still going off of the secular level. So, meaning that people think, for example, pedophilia is wrong within the secular consensus, but basically, because this is upon shared human experiences. So, if we include the value of human life, most people possess an innate understanding of the consequences of murder and the, for example, emotional responses. It's what do you say emanates, like, for example, fear, horror, grief, and like whatever.
Yeah,
So if an
I
individual
get
believes that
that.
murder is right, their view would necessarily be at odds with, for example, the
Secular laws.
societal consensus.
Let's just say, like, for example, that that murder belief would be um against a, let's just say, a distinct secular law, because let's just externally
No,
give a very
I'm just giving
wait,
like an
hold
example
on,
of
hold on, hold
like
on, hold on,
secular
hold on.
laws within the
Let me
natural
give it like
world.
a refutation real quick, because like um it's about that secular law thing, about the society thing, about how that specific group of people, that token distinction of people versus the other people who don't agree with that specific variable within the
No, I gave it
secular
as an
law.
example.
Yeah, yeah, that's basically just like a representation, which could be like a denotation of what you're trying to say. But what I'm saying is that even if there's like a token distinction, well, there is. I don't know why I'm saying that, but since there's a token distinction between that specific group of people within that secular framework of a country, right, who have that specific belief, and then there's that dichotomous people who are against that and have their own separate belief, that would only be applicable to, let's just say, the that specific people, like, within that. It wouldn't necessarily make a I'd say it still just agrees that it wouldn't mean a universal doctrine. It only agree with some people, because let's just take in the fact of what a token distinction is. A token distinction is basically where you have two distinct categories of something, and since that these secular things, or rather secular beliefs, have a token distinction that exists with them via the substance we gave about people who have the belief of wanting people to get harmed versus people who want to protect people from harm. That's like an opposing thing to one another. So then again, that would be two different categories. So there exists a token distinction. We can just grant that P to Q condition set. And so because of that condition thing, it just wouldn't only it would it just wouldn't apply to that specific secular thing, because let's just bring in another variable. Let's just say, for a hypothetical, there exists a country who allows murder. Hold up, let me just actually get an example of a country who will. Give me a second. FBI is gonna be checking my search history. I'm getting it. I got a question for you. Do you grant that abortion could be a form of murder? Right?
Abortion could be a form of murder. Um,
Like, wait, hold up. Let me
well,
just
what would
add
you
more
say,
context. Wait, hold up. Can I add more
like, you
context to
mean
that?
immoral murder?
Well, I add more
Sure.
context to that question so we can understand what
I
we're
don't think.
talking
I
about.
don't think. I think like going if you say murder, I guess necessarily like that's a murder of abortion would necessarily be premeditated, but I don't think it necessarily is unlawful.
Yeah, but what I meant by adding more context to that, let's just say that the doctor who's enacting the thing has the intention of killing the baby before, instead of it being preconceived. He wants to just murder the thing, even if the abortion is planned. Let's just say he has no awareness of this freaking abortion being planned because they're just getting into the hospital, right? And he doesn't know what the surgery is, right? Let's just say this doctor is newly assigned, right? And he has this like will to kill a baby, right? And he's the doctor
Uh huh.
assigned an abortion. This technically his intention would be to murder the baby because he wants to do or rather kill the baby. He has the intention to murder it. So what if, since his intention is already clarified, he wants to kill the baby, and because it isn't preconceived, because he doesn't know about it, it's being conceived as he's doing it, and he would just have this intention newly. What if he wants to kill the baby? Again, like I'm repeating myself about that. I'm sorry about that.
What if he wants to kill the
What if
baby? Okay.
yeah, like what
Um,
if he wanted to kill it? It's
I
like
don't
conceived
necessarily.
murdering it.
I think.
Do you think that's
I don't think abortion in this case is what you would say unlawful murder because I'm more like pro circumstance with an abortion. Like for example, if for example the said baby is harming the mother's life, or necessarily for example it could be a bunch of like cases. If we were taking it to the like the actualist atheist view, then we could say for example the father within his economic value is struggling in this case, and the baby might have some political, well, not political, I mean it could be political, but could have some individual effect on this, on like the father said work. But it also could be the case that the baby came from necessarily like what you would say rape, which in this case rape is also unlawful. And obviously for example, I don't think like somebody should keep a baby. I mean, it's like within our world, like it is kind of your choice if you want, but I think like coming to like a consensus, I don't think if you do not want to have a baby that came from a rapist, then do not have that said baby, especially from my religious belief too. I don't think you should, what you would say, have a baby that came from rape. And also if like if it's life threatening too, I think you should necessarily get rid of it, because if it could be the case that you both die, because like if you die from having a baby and like that's a thing that's like life threatening in your body, then necessarily you would die with that said baby. So if you don't get an abortion, then it wouldn't really change anything because the baby dies with you too.
that's I guess that's like a fair response, but what I was saying is that like just repeat that real quick. I wasn't like talking about like how other people have feelings about the baby. I'm talking about the doctor, right? The doctor wants to murder the baby intentionally without like any awareness of what's happening, right? Because he doesn't have any external awareness or affirmation as to what happens because he's conceiving the idea to kill this baby during the abortion. His intention, like, is already clarified because the semantics should be like self-evident. And self-evident, I mean by like there's like a demonstration, like no demonstration needed. By murder, I'm just gonna be using like some short definition. Well, let me just get it.
It's just gonna say unlawful and premeditated murder.
Sure, I guess we can roll with that. And what if he's just enacting this specific intention of murder, like because he doesn't
Okay,
have
so
any
like
awareness
wait,
about
so
that side?
it's like, is there semantics saying that in this situation that the doctor is unaware of why the abortion is happening? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he's just unaware of that, right? And he's conceiving the idea to kill this baby unlawfully. Like he just wants to kill it, like but because it's an abortion, it's secularly allowed for him to do this.
Okay, so You're saying like he wants to kill it, right?
Yeah,
He
like he
wants to
just like let's
he
just
like
say he
really wants
takes
to
a
kill it.
fucking hammer to it.
Okay, if he doesn't know it, I mean, I don't really know. I think what you would say the realistic moral view on that would necessarily like I would necessarily say that it wouldn't be wrong with the realistic moral view and like the external part. But if we go on the intrinsic part, which contains the doctor's intentions, then I believe the doctor's intentions and the doctor's view of this entire situation is like entirely immoral. But I do not think the external moral value in that case is immoral. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I'm not like talk about the external value because the external value has nothing to do with the doctor himself because the analogy was describing the doctor's
Okay,
conceiving
so I
internal
think yeah.
belief.
Okay, so therefore, then I agreed. Like the doctor's intentions in this case, that would necessarily be immoral.
Okay. So bringing up back the token distinction we made between the dichotomous stances between the secular things about like the society and the specific people. We can also just say because that specific analogy which you granted, the doctor would be immoral in doing, but still has the legal authority to do it because he's announcing an abortion, right? He basically has the permission to do this. Basically, under some form of circumstance, even if the countries were prohibiting murder, his belief is still having a methodology actualizing it. So when we take that into account, basically, even if you want to say that countries prohibit murder and it would just be a universal doctrine within that sense for the secular law type thing, not necessarily because there's still internal things which can be looped around or just like
Wait, I don't know.
flipped around
I
by
understand.
like
I don't understand like the rest part of the argument, but I don't understand because you're just kind of like looping around in this case. I don't like really understand because like what I'm trying to get here is for example the murder part in this case. Like I don't really understand that set thing because like
oh no
obviously you're looping
if you
around
want wait if
you
you want
know the
clarification
policies. Yeah.
you want clarification I didn't hear your answer sorry like can
Sure.
you
Yeah. Okay. So like I was saying, I think you're like kind of looping around because like what you're trying to deposit with, let's say in this case, murder is wrong with the doctor thing. I think the doctor's what you would say mind and view on this and attention would necessarily be immoral, but I think that's just going off of the individual part in this case, and that's only refuting the intrinsic and individual part. What I want here is a refutation to both the external and intrinsic part in this case. You're just kind of looping around from for example, you're giving this analogy of a the doctor like when it's intrinsic intentions, but you're also going off of the entire main basis of what I'm saying and trying to also give a refutation of what I'm saying. So like I just want to kind of understand how that necessarily just refutes my point because you're just looping around right here from like, what I see.
not necessarily looping around because I'll like explain again because what you described is that in the secular law type thing or the doctrine itself, how it's universally applicable to this specific society and the other peoples would be just rejected from that society. But what if there are people like this specific doctor, which you granted would be immoral, right? Who is looping around the law, the secular law within the doctrine to enable his belief of killing, which is dichotomous to the society. He is not universally applicable to that said law because he is going against that. To say that he is applicable under this law despite having shown substance which is against that, that would just be a paradoxical statement
Okay, that
and
would
just
okay that would
wrong.
just okay
It's,
that's not necessarily like a paradoxical statement. I mean,
that
well, you
kind
could
of
say it's a
is because
paradoxical
it's an
statement.
internal contradiction. What I
No, no,
mean
no, my
by
bad, my bad. I
paradoxical,
already agree it's a paradoxical statement. My bad.
Wait, what I mean by paradoxical statement is just that it's an internal contradiction basically, because we already like described the substance for
Oh,
the
wait,
universal doctrine part, and then we just put that into
wait.
conjunction with the analogy and how the doctor would be looping around its laws. Basically, he would be not applicable to it, despite society having rejected these people, but they still accept these people without knowing. So basically, they would be applicable on this law, and because it's dichotomous to that said law, it wouldn't be universal because there's people like the doctor who go against this law intentionally and individually, yet these people don't know. So basically, when he's saying you don't murder someone, right? He's still given legal permission to murder that person. His intention is basically having a conjunctive state of affairs with that said law, and yet these people externally don't know his intentions speaking like that, right? But because of him finding a loophole around the doctrine itself, he isn't universally applicable to these said laws because his intention is dichotomous to that, and he is a serial killer, basically, by the analogy which you granted. That's what I'm
Okay, I
refuting here.
intrinsically,
It
yeah,
wouldn't
okay, so
necessarily be like, what'd you say?
I get like I intrinsically granted that, but that could necessarily be what you would say an internal contradiction within the intrinsic affair. But like going off the value that's a moral action, once again, within the external part, I don't really see how there is necessarily anything going wrong about there. I mean, obviously, within his set intentions, I guess, yeah, sure, obviously, he wouldn't necessarily be a serial killer going by what you said, but like for example, within the token distinction, for example, there's type versus token. So when we refer to type necessarily refers to like the negation of the token distinction. So for example, the type can basically just say quote unquote murder being wrong, and the other token distinction would necessarily be saying murder is right. So in the context of this the moral model and like this the distinction here, you're using that to argue that while the individual moral beliefs may differ, they can still be an objective moral standard necessarily. All right, and that's just basically my
No, I'm not
refutation.
necessarily saying it's objective moral standard because
No,
again,
no,
where I'm
that
wait,
is
wait,
my
hold on, hold
refutation.
on,
That is
hold
my
on, hold
refutation.
on, hold on, hold on, hold on. I'm just like predicating a counter initiative on that. What I'm saying is I'm going based upon the model you gave about that secular doctrine. You said there's a doctrine which wants to protect people from harm, yet there's legal affirmation for people to go ahead and give some serial killer bullshit because we already know it's being legally looped around, and you already granted that this doctrine would be basically a serial killer under what the
Okay,
analogy is
wait. No,
describing.
that's like, no, that's a modal fallacy.
How?
That's a modal Okay, you said like doctors want to help people, right? But in this case, like
No, I
like
didn't
this
say
said
doctors
doctor.
want to help people. I didn't say doctors want to help people. I said that what you're positing within the doctrine itself is that it's universally the doctrine itself, not necessarily people, but the doctrine, the rules of the secular laws of this specific area or location wants to universally protect people from laws because it's uh basically a consensus type thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's universally applicable. That's what I'm saying. It's not necessarily people.
Wait, no. Okay, so yeah, okay, so I understand what you're responding to about when I like when you just said like I said you believe that they can be objective moral standard, but no, when I said for example an individual's moral beliefs, like they said doctor, may differ, and that would be a token distinction you're talking about. But there can still be an objective moral standard, which is this said the type. There's type and token. That's the main distinction between it,
Yeah,
recognized by
token
that said
itself, like
society.
token itself is just like a distinction between the
Yeah, yeah,
categories.
I know, I know,
What I
I
meant
know.
the but still like because the analogy itself is still having some form of legal verifiable way to kill though. That's the main point of the analogy
Legal
used to go
verified way
ahead
to
and
kill.
justify.
Okay, wait. So let's give upon this. So when somebody gives the order for this doctor to, for example, exterminate this baby, they give a legal affair. So, for example, in the main consensus of an abortion, you tell the person why do you want to have this said abortion. So, if the doctor doesn't know, then the person who gave the doctor's orders for the said abortion must know in this case because I mean within this hypothetical situation, like wouldn't that just be entirely unlikely to just have an abortion without giving somebody the certificate reason for why you want this abortion? So necessarily the one who gives the doctor's orders, right? The one who gives the doctor's orders knows about the reason within this abortion. So if they know about this, like the reason within this abortion, then I don't necessarily think, for example, within giving the state a fair. to for the doctor to kill, I don't think that is morally wrong. I think the only thing that would necessarily be wrong in this case is, for example, the doctor's view and intention on this said thing. So anything clarifying why the doctor is said doing this, and the external part after the action that is done by him, I don't think anything is necessarily morally wrong, or morally wrong in this case. So with this token distinction, you just imply that individual emotional responses, differ significantly. But this does not automatically qualify one emotion or belief as morally right or justifiable over another, right? So if a person believes like murder is right based on their emotional response, does not create an equal moral understanding against their overwhelming societal reaction that necessarily condemns this said murder. So this basically just simply, for example, having a different, like, no, this is just simply having a token, like a different token, right? So it does not necessarily change, the societal holy fucking shit, bro.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hold on. I'm not like, yeah, I get that part doesn't change the societal part. But what I did say is that the doctor is finding a loophole to enact his view, to enact some form of methodology. He's legally finding his way around the secular law. I'm not saying that it's gonna be condemned
Wait,
because
he's
he's
legally,
using abortion
wait,
as a way
he's
to
legally,
enact that out.
okay, wait. So you're just saying that he's necessarily just manipulating this in this case?
He's basically using the law to his advantage to then go
Okay,
against
so
the
if he's
law.
using the law to his advantage and he's manipulating it, I don't really see a problem with that. Like,
You
for
know what?
example,
I just got a question though. Like before we continue,
yeah.
you want to go to conclusions already? Well, not just to conclusions, but you just want to end the recording, I guess, because it's just gonna depend on consensus from the YouTube, I guess.
I don't really know, but I wanna go over what you said. So, if you're saying
We
like
can like
the
do
doctor
that.
is you, what are you gonna say?
I said we could do that.
Oh, okay, my bad. So if you're just saying like the doctor's just gonna use the secular law to its advantage, then that's already just agreeing that like this said doctor is like manipulating and finding a loophole around this said um morality or whatever, yeah, secular
Wait,
laws,
wait, wait, wait.
right?
No, hold on,
But
hold
if
on, hold on.
he's
What I said is not specifically morality. What I'm saying is that he's using the law to then go against the law. He's manipulating the law to then use a dichotomous methodology to
no,
enact his.
that's misinterpreting what I said. When I said
Wait,
morality,
no, wait, that
I
wasn't
already said
misinterpretation. Because wait, no,
no.
no, no,
When I
no.
said
That's a non sequitur.
when I said
Hold up. That's a non sequitur because I'm not positing or predicating a response to yours. I'm saying what I said. Basically, I'm just reaffirming what I said. No, I'm not strawmanning you or misrepresenting your argument because I'm not predicating from your argument. I'm just clarifying what I said, which would be
oh,
independent from what you said because there's no dependent clause response to that.
all right, that's kind of confusing, but like I was saying, if the doctor is trying to find or using his advantage to find this loophole around the secular these said secular laws, then I don't really see like the problem with that. Yeah, sure, he can have like a different token, but that wouldn't like have any effect or change. But for example, if he's manipulating, for example, the secular law, then there is necessarily like no refutation of that, because even though he's manipulating something, that's just him being smart. So if you can manipulate secular laws, then like that's still not changing anything at all. Because if you're using this to, your advantage, and it's not really
Wait.
showing, for
I just need
example,
to
a
clarify something.
paradoxical
What do you mean
or
by changing something? Like changing what?
like necessarily changing or bringing a contradiction to this said thing.
Like
Because
oh
like you said, the doctor creates an internal contradiction within this law, right? But if he's using his advantage and manipulating the law, which you obviously agree to, because using something to its advantage against itself is necessarily manipulating it. So
wait,
if
no,
he's
I wasn't
manipulating the
saying
law,
that was a contradiction. No, I was saying something else was a contradiction. No. I don't think him using the law is to his advantage to then enact something against the law would be a contradiction because he's just using P to Q to create a condition instead of thing. That's about it. But I don't necessarily say
Not a
that is a
no, it's
condition.
not a condition of said a thing because if it was a condition of a said a thing, then he wouldn't be using the law to its advantage.
No, wait, hold up. The reason why it's conditioned is because then it's from the consequence of his action. He's using the law to then, get a consequence. What I mean is that I'm not using the D annotation. I'm like using not the actual thing, but like sort of like a representation of what it is. It's not the actual definition, but it's something that can reflect what I'm saying. I don't know what you call it. I forgot what you call it, but I'm not using like some form of deannotation of what it is. But if you get what I'm saying, like it's just something to help us understand. Like give us a framework. It's
Okay.
just like something like it's conjunctive, I guess. If you want to say that. Oh,
Constructive.
hey, my PC updated. Anyways, I think we can end
I
the
don't.
recording.
I mean, we can if you want to, but like, I'm still confused on that point. I don't really see like a refutation at all.
You don't have to like see a refutation. I mean, it was fun discussing though. Like I actually had one. Like if you want to know, this was like my first ethics debate. How did I do?
You did pretty well. I'm gonna be honest.
Thanks, man.
I
Appreciate
debated like a lot of people in purgatory on ethics, and I mean they did decent as well. But like, I'm not gonna lie, like you kind of did better than them, most of them.
Thanks, man. I've been like practicing like so fucking much. Oh, whoa. Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah.
Okay, my bad.
Astaghfirullah, bro. Astaghfirullah. No, shut up. Stop laughing at me, bro.
My bad, bro. Oh, by the way,
No,
if you
you're
wanna like, if you wanna say more fluently, it's astaghfirullah.
astaghfirullah. I can't say it fluently, but you know what I'm saying, bro.
My bad, bro.
Chill.
My bad, bro.
All right, but thanks for the compliment, and I actually enjoyed this. You plan on uploading this to your YouTube or what?
I mean, I don't really plan on uploading it. I don't think it's gonna be like, this is an exciting debate, but you can upload it to your YouTube. It's fine.
All right, hey, can you like pass me your YouTube channel? Cause like I have trouble spelling that as well, surprisingly, as much as I speak.
Oh, okay.
Where's the chat thing? Here we go. Let me just save it.